Mindset is one of the few tools that impacts every single part of your life, every single hour of your life. Meaning, if I got on this podcast and I taught all your listeners a really amazing email technique, that would help them when they're in their inbox. If I got on here and taught them a really amazing decluttering technique, that would help them into their garage and their attic. But if you talk about mindset, it impacts every single thing you do because you're never not thinking. And that's what's fun for me.
Let's talk about change. The truth is, nothing changes unless you change. And if you want to step into your full potential, you need to surround yourself with the right people. That is exactly why I have created the InPowered Life community. Within this community, I'm going to be teaching you the exact same mindset and energy practices that I have taught my clients that are paying me well over six figures, including CEO owners of billion-dollar organizations and professionals at the very top of their fields. You're going to get access to 2 live virtual calls every single month with me, where we're going to dive into mindset, energy practices, spiritual principles that are going to help you thrive in every area of your life. Can't make a call? No worries. We're going to provide you with a recording so that you can catch up anytime. Plus, you're going to have the opportunity for direct coaching from me and to learn from incredible guest speakers who are going to share their best practices and growth. Remember, you become the people that you spend the most time with. So why not spend time within a community that is going to elevate you and your life? For an introductory $499, you're going to get a full year of support and coaching alongside high performers who are committed to expanding their careers, their growth, their finances, and to elevate their overall quality of life. Just click the link in the show notes or log into rudyricksteins.com to lock in your spot and start your transformation today. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast, a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, then hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudi and Jon Ricksteins, and this is the Empowered Life. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. My name is Rudi Ricksteins. I'm your host, and you are listening to a show about how to live your highest and your greatest potential. I pride myself on always bringing people in that are going to support you in not only seeing the vision for your highest and your greatest potential, but be able to give you easy, digestible, tangible steps that you can take in order to achieve that. I do believe that if you're listening to the show, you're a high performer who is seeking something. And sometimes what we want is so close to where we are, but we just can't see through the trees. And every now and again, somebody comes forward with an incredible work of art. Maybe it's a book, it's a podcast episode, maybe it's all of the above. And it just illuminates everything for you. And you are able to then connect to the next step that's going to take you to where you go. I'm so excited to bring today to the show, Jon Acuff. What an incredible human being. I have been following him and his work, which started on LinkedIn for years, his ability to be able to take complex problems and bring them forward in a way that anyone and everyone can understand. He started doing a series of videos where he was just going for a run or doing a walk. And recently I even saw a video of him doing push-ups in his garage while he was busy explaining something. And it's so captivating and inspiring to be able to see that we can have a human-to-human connection through something as simple as a device, which I think has been lost for so long. Jon Acuff is a New York Times best-selling author. He has put out 10 and currently in the works with an 11th book that I heard is in the works. That's a rumor. We'll clarify in a moment. Incredible keynote speaker. He is an expert in leadership and personal development. In addition to that, he is the host of the very successful All It Takes Is a Goal podcast. I am honored and I am excited to share space with you, Jon. Thank you so much for joining us on the Empowered Life podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think this is going to be a lot of fun today.
Yeah, I am so excited to dive in. I actually had a couple of opening questions. I usually don't plan a bunch of questions. I like to have just a dialogue. However, while I was just talking about this tremendous success that you've already created and having put out already 10 books, I mean, my thought in just reading that was, how does somebody actually produce 10 books that people want to read that actually has the potential to create profound impact? Because your books do every time. It's like something new. You're not repeating the same information over and over, and they just continue to be the incredible successes. And I think, just as an audience listening to that, how does somebody achieve something like, is there a roadmap you use to even tackle that?
What's funny is there actually is. There's a framework I use that I've developed over time, and it's really simple. I think anybody listening can certainly take it today and use it. It's three things. I look for a need. So are people really needing this? Am I hearing it at the neighborhood pool? Are friends telling me this question? Am I seeing it online? Our clients, you and I go speak to clients, our clients bringing it up. So first thing I look for is a need. The second thing I look for is a personal, passionate connection. I'm going to talk about this topic maybe for the rest of my life. I have to really be into it. So I look for a personal connection to the content. The third thing I look for is a hole in the marketplace. Is there a place for me to fit into the marketplace with this conversation? So an example of that would be the book Finish. I wrote this book called Finish about finishing projects. And so I started to have people come up to me and go, "Hey, Jon, I read your book Start, but I've never had a problem starting. How do I actually get something done?" And I realized, oh, wow, there is a need. And then I realized I am a classic starter, but have a hard time finishing. So I had a personal desire to learn, what does it take to go from being a chronic starter into a consistent finisher? And then finally, I went to the marketplace, which is easy for books because it's Amazon. And I searched Finish on Amazon. And the only thing that came up, Rudi, was dishwasher detergent, because we in Western culture celebrate the start and we ignore the finish. And so I realized, wow, the only thing for sale on Amazon is Finish dishwasher detergent. Now I have a connection. See, here's the problem, Rudi. If you only have two, it doesn't work. If I go, man, I'm really passionate about this topic, I see people need it, but it's already filled in the marketplace, that's a cake pop. If you came up to me today and were like, "Jon, I'm going to do this thing called cake pops," I'd go, "Oh, Rudi, I have terrible news. Starbucks has them. The market's already full." If you said, "Okay, I've got a really great passion, nobody's serving it in the marketplace, but nobody needs it," that's a hobby. Like, you might be really into albino ferrets, and I'd be like, "That's great, Rudi. Like, you should have an albino ferret farm. It's not going to be a good business, but it'll be a great hobby." If you said, "Jon, I found a need and I found a hole in the marketplace," but you're not personally connected to it, you just created a day job. You might make a little money on it, but you won't have the personal drive to stick with it. So when I come to a new topic, I think about, okay, do I see a need? Do I have a heart connection to it? Is there a spot in the marketplace for me? And if I can get that Venn diagram right, then the book is successful.
Wow, I actually love that. I have always created content, meaning more like short form content, social media, seminars, trainings, that kind of thing, around what am I going through. Because I realized that if I'm experiencing something, there must be somebody else that needs to know what I'm learning in that moment. And that becomes what I teach. I had once read in a spiritual book, and I actually believe this was a Wayne Dyer quote. We had mentioned him before we hit record, but that, the teacher is always learning what he most needs. He's always teaching what he most needs to learn. And that really sat with me. And so now I use my life as the indicator for what do I need to teach. And so if I'm driving in my car and I'm having a tough day, and then I'll pick up my phone and I'll film a video about, hey, if you're having a tough day, there's a rainbow on the other side, something to that degree. And I think that's really like the true way to do it. But I love that you gave us a formula, because a lot of people want to produce a book. And the fascinating thing is, when you look at statistically how many people actually want to write a book versus write a book versus become a bestseller, and you've been able to successfully be able to do this again and again and again. And that wasn't a question I was planning on asking, but I'm so grateful that you did. Now I have a follow-up to that, because you've written a bunch of incredible books. I want to talk about soundtracks, because I love your thought process that we all are playing a soundtrack in our minds. I had heard an interview recently, maybe 2 months ago, where somebody was talking about an experience they had with Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson quoted music as being spells. And somebody said, "How could you call them spells?" And he said to this interviewer, "I want you to think about all these kids and all these people walking around listening to your music, and they repeating it in their minds again and again and again and again. And that becomes a mantra for them. And eventually that becomes who they are. And are you singing a song that in the music is uplifting, or are you singing a song that's bringing them down?" And what I love about your book is that we all have that inner soundtrack. I was so carefully thinking about, oh, what music do I listen to now after that interview? But I wasn't thinking about what is my soundtrack. So, do you mind, for the benefit of the audience, explain a little bit more about what is the concept behind the inner dialogue that we have? And then my follow up to that, what I really want to know is what was your personal connection to that?
Yeah, so I would just say a soundtrack is my phrase for repetitive thought. A thought you listen to again and again and again. And I've heard people say a thought is like a leaf on a river or a cloud in the sky or a car on the highway. But for me, it's always been a soundtrack because a soundtrack has the power to change an entire moment. And often you don't even notice it's playing. Like think about a movie that opens up on a little house, maybe a white picket fence, some kids frolicking, but then they play something ominous. It changes the entire feel. Suddenly you go, don't go in that house. It's quiet. It's too quiet. There could be a creepy clown in the sewer. It changes everything. And that's how your brain works. Meaning you have a soundtrack for every city you've ever lived in. Like you and I talked about Miami. You have soundtracks about Miami. You have a soundtrack for every job you've ever had, for every person you've ever dated. That's all culture is at a company is soundtracks people are listening to consistently in a group. And the longer you listen to certain soundtracks, the more they become part of your personal playlist. And I'll give you an example. I work with executives, you work with executives, and often you'll find somebody who's 48, 52, and they're being given new opportunities and they're pulling back, or worse, they're self-sabotaging. They're being asked to step into leadership and they're saying, well, no, I'm not a natural leader. No, I'm not a natural leader. And if you pull the thread long enough, you find out when they were 12, 13, 14, 15, somebody in power, a coach, a teacher, a pastor, a parent told them, you're not a natural leader. And they believed it in the moment. And then they listened to that soundtrack for 30 or 40 years. And so you say to them at 52, I can't believe you don't want this leadership position, but they've been listening to that same song, that soundtrack for 30 years in a row. And so for me, that's what a soundtrack is. It's something that's happening and you get to choose, okay, well, what do I want to do with that? Knowing that, what do I want to do with it? And that's why I like mindset. Mindset is one of the few tools that impacts every single part of your life, every single hour of your life. Meaning, if I got on this podcast and I taught all your listeners a really amazing email technique, that would help them when they're in their inbox. If I got on here and taught them a really amazing decluttering technique, that would help them in their garage, in their attic. But if you talk about mindset, it impacts every single thing you do because you're never not thinking. And that's what's fun for me. Now, for me, where I got into it, I was a classic overthinker. The big switch for me, Rudi, was when I realized that a brain that can worry can wonder. A brain that can doubt can dare. A brain that can spin can soar. So I just realized that a plane can drop a bomb or food. A syringe can deliver poison or medicine. What if I could take all this anxiety, all this overthinking, and actually channel it to where I want to go, to what I want to do? And so when people go, how have you written 10 books? Like I go, I got a lot of thoughts. I got a lot of ideas in my head. And I've just learned to say, okay, what if I applied anxiety to creativity? What if I applied overthinking to writing more books? What if I applied, how I think about myself in a positive way? And so the truth of the matter is, and I tell people this all the time, I'm a very negative person by nature. I'm very cynical. I'm very jaded. I'm very sarcastic. I just learned over time that positivity has a better ROI than negativity. So I'm very deliberate about my mindset. I'm very deliberate about my relationships. I'm very deliberate about the music I listen to. I 100% agree with you about the music idea. The thing that I'm sad about for people right now is there's so many studies. Like my favorite one, Daniel Kahneman did it from his book Thinking Fast and Slow, where they had college kids do a test, two different groups. In one group, they gave them a bunch of words and said, make some sentences. The other group, they gave them a bunch of words and said, make some sentences. But the second group had words hidden in their collection related to being old. So words like slow and bald and retired and even Florida. So they come up with these sentences and then they say, hey, half an hour later, the second part of the test is down the hall. Please walk to the end of the hall. And that's where the real test started because the scientists secretly timed how long it took them to walk to the end of the hall. And the students who had read the words about being old physically acted old. They walked slower just from reading words. So imagine how powerful it is when you wear a shirt that says, I can't adult today. Like where you're wearing, there's sadness couture. If you go to Target, there's 50 different pictures, 50 different t-shirts that say adulting is hard. I'm sorry I'm late. I didn't want to come. Don't talk to me. I'm, antisocial. And we're putting those ideas in our heads over and over. I mean, if you read words about being old for 30 minutes, you acted old. Imagine the negativity that we roll around in, the negativity that we accept. And so that's what gets me sad about where culture is right now, but excited about the potential of when you do the reverse. When you practice positivity, when you change your soundtracks, when you lean into your mindset, I really do believe anything is possible because I've experienced it and I've seen tons of other people experience it too.
Hey, it's Aniston Ricksteins here, and I want to ask you, have you ever wondered if there's more to your life and work than what you're doing right now? What if I told you that the universe is hiring and you were born to fill a role that will bring you true purpose and success? In my new #1 best-selling book, The Universe is Hiring, Discover the Role You Were Born to Fill, I'm going to show you exactly how to step into that role. This isn't just a book full of inspiration. It's a roadmap to help you start shifting into a more fulfilling life right now. You'll get clear on your unique purpose, learn how to align with your strengths, and take actionable steps towards the career and life that truly light you up. If you're ready to make a change and start living the life you were meant for, grab your copy today. Available anywhere you buy your books online or click the link in the show notes.
So I'm going to ask you to give us the framework, and now for the benefit of the audience, what I love about your teachings, Jon, is you literally you framework everything, and you make it so digestible that it's really easy for somebody to say, okay, well, that's a complex thing. I don't have the understanding that Jon has. Jon's been doing this, for a decade at a very high level, so that's good. Makes sense. Jon can do that, but here I am sitting on the couch watching Netflix. I don't have the skills and the tools. How would somebody be able to identify what is their soundtrack and then do something with that information?
Sure. I will give you an exercise anyone can do in about 60 seconds. And the general framework that I teach in the book Soundtracks is there's 3 steps. You retire your broken soundtracks, you replace them with new ones, and then you repeat those new ones so often they become as automatic as the old ones. So 3 R words. I even, alliteration. I'm an alliteration guy. And the reason I simplify things and make it a framework and practical is so that I can use it. Anything I create, you and I are similar in that, where anything I create, I go, okay, great, but what do I do with this on a Tuesday? I don't like big, fluffy, holistic stuff that makes me feel inadequate and I don't know how to change my life with it. I don't like keynotes that I get really inspired and by the time I get to the car, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. And so I'm always going, great, what do I do with this on a Tuesday? So if you wanted to do that first step, retire a broken soundtrack, and you said, okay, well, Jon, how do I even identify one? It's a great question. And here's the activity. It's so easy. Step 1, write down a goal. And it can be any goal. It can be, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to start my own podcast. Rudi inspired me to be a speaker. I want to go be a speaker. I want to live somewhere beautiful. Rudi, you live somewhere beautiful. Like maybe somebody wants to move to Colorado. Write down any goal. And then the second step is listen to your thoughts, the first thoughts that come. Listen to your reaction about that goal because every reaction is an education. Are your first thoughts, you should do that. You'll be equipped to do that. You're the best at that. Finally, this is going to work. Or are they negative? Are they, who are you to think you can do that? That'll never work. You don't have the money. You don't have the ability. You tried before and it didn't work. Like the thing I sometimes tell people is the hardest part of the 11th diet is the first 10 that didn't work. Because the minute you try the new one, the old ones come out of the woodwork. And the joke I do, because Rudi, I use a lot of humor in my communication because it's a great vehicle for truth. I use humor as a great vehicle for truth. So Chris Rock, the comedian, said there's some things people won't listen to unless they're laughing at the same time. And so in this exact situation, when I tell somebody positive, negative thoughts, what do you have? I'll say the hardest part of the 11th diet is the first 10 didn't work. And then the joke I use to soften it is if you buy a Peloton, your Bowflex will crawl out of the closet. Like your Bowflex will be like, remember me? And then I'll say, even your Thigh Master will come out of the closet and be like, hey, remember me? I'm the Thigh Master. And then I'll say to an audience, if you're too young to remember a Thigh Master, in the 1980s, there was a scientist named Suzanne Summers, a doctor really, who taught us all that our thighs were our most important part of the body. But that's a quick way to go, wow, I have a lot of negative thoughts. When I wrote down that I could lose 10 pounds, I came up with 10 negative thoughts. Or when I said I want to start a company, I had 10 negative thoughts. And if you identify that, then you can start to retire them. But it smokes out our negativity so quickly, because I would say the majority of people I've taken through this exercise don't have naturally positive thoughts, meaning their first thoughts are, you're so equipped, you're so skilled, this is going to work, it's going to be easy, you can do it. Like very few people I meet start from that place naturally. I think some people do, and I am grateful that our planet has them. I don't personally. I have to work my way into this. And so it's kind of like, I love a personal trainer who has a story that's like, hey, this is me at 300 pounds. And this is what and you go like, oh, okay, well, here's what I'm kind of the after photo in an overthinking picture where I'm like, hey, I used to do this. I didn't write a book in my first book until I was 34. I didn't start a company when I was 22. Some people, what's discouraging for me is when I see people and they had a business in the womb. Like they were a fetus and had a small company they were already running and they scaled it at 4, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that's not my story. I'm a late bloomer. So I think some of my messaging appeals to the people that are sitting on the couch and go, well, I don't know if I could do it. I go, yeah, I had that same thought. I have those same thoughts every day, but here's what I do in the face of those thoughts. Here's why I think you can do it, because there's no reason I should have been able to do it.
It's not the first time I've heard you talk about bringing humor in, and it was something I wanted to bring up because I do think that your ability to reach people through humor is what separates you from people in this space. And your humor is always genuine and it connects to the person, and the person can see themselves in the story that you're sharing. And even though I've heard that story before, even when you mentioned it now, I saw my mom in the 90s on the floor of her bedroom. I can literally see her using this thing between her thighs while she's watching a video. And so I 100% resonate with it. I have heard you previously give 3 very specific questions that people can ask themselves. I would love it if you could go and just explain the process behind, is it true, is it helpful, and is it kind? Because I think that for me, when I heard it, it was like, I'll never forget it. And so now it's, if I'm having a thought along something like, I don't know if I can do this, like, who am I to do this? I then can catch myself and create that shift. I think the audience would really benefit from that.
Sure. Yeah. It's a really, again, simple framework. The first question is it true? Is the story I'm telling myself about myself true? Is the story I'm telling myself about this challenge, about what this person said to me, about this phone call from my boss? Is it true? One of the greatest mistakes you can make in life is assuming all your thoughts are true. And the reason we do it is really simple. The reason is because every thought you've had is delivered in the voice you're most familiar with, your own. And we never call our thoughts out on the lies they tell us. And they lie to us all the time. I mean, I think about that, the brain is so gullible and sometimes a jerk, meaning like an example would be like memory consistency. We think our brains are like GoPros and they remember the situation the way it happened forever. But there was a really interesting study done after 9/11 where it was a flashbulb moment study where they took people right after 9/11 and said, write down where you were. We want to know exactly where you were, like you write down in your own handwriting. So they wrote down where they were. They came back 10 years later, long study, 10 years later, and said, hey, where were you when 9/11 happened? And 61% of their memories had changed. 61%, like imagine, Rudi, if you had a friend that lied to you 60% of the time. Like imagine if you were married, your wife was like, she's an amazing woman. She's the best. She has this one thing where she lies 60% of the time, but 40% of the time you can trust her. The other 60%, little sketch. That would be a terrible marriage. And so you have to go in knowing, okay, my brain's going to tell me untrue things. It's my job to go, is that true? Second question, is it helpful? When I repeat this to myself, does it push me forward or pull me back? Now, the big question there is, why do we need more than one question? Why is it true enough? Because there's a lot of things in life that are true, but they're not helpful. They're true, they're just not helpful. I'll give you an example. I interviewed a manager who told me, Jon, 12 years ago, I got fired from my job. And every time I'm in the office and I see a door close on a meeting I'm not part of, I start to overthink that. I start to go, should I be in that meeting? Who's in that meeting? Why am I not in that meeting? Are powerful people in that meeting? Let's say he only does that 10 minutes a day, 5 times a week. That's 50 minutes a week. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is he's done it for 12 years. And over a 12-year period, that equates to 62 8-hour workdays worth of time. Now, is it true he could be fired again? It is. It's true of all of us. But is it helpful for him to donate that amount of time to that thought? Of course not. Third question is it kind? Is it kind? Would I say this to somebody else? Would I accept this from somebody else? That's a really fun mindset kind of trick, is to go, if a friend told you the thing you're telling yourself, would you still want to be friends with that person? Would that still be somebody you made time for? Or would you go, I can't, every time I'm around you, you're so mean to me. Like one of the soundtracks I use for people is never hold a grudge against yourself. I think regret, if you're not careful, turns into a grudge. And so I'll go like, never make yourself your arch nemesis. Like I don't want that battle. Like that's not the way that I want to live. And so the three questions are, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? And if you can't say yes to all of them, it's probably a broken soundtrack that you might want to retire.
Man, I thought that was so helpful. I have used the "is it even true" phrase, and I teach it a lot. Is it even true? Like, even when my kids come home and they say something about something that happened at school, about something somebody said to them, I'm like, man, is that even true? My daughter is
How old
9
is
years.
she, or how old are they?
My daughter's 9 and my son's
Okay.
11. And my daughter this weekend wasn't invited to a friend of hers birthday party. And, that at 9 years old is a big deal. And she has the mental ability to just say, like, we're not really close friends. I know it's a small classroom, but I don't really care for her. I'm sure she doesn't care for me. And so she could articulate and speak through the emotion. But I was just thinking back to when that happened to me when I was around about that age. And it was the biggest heartbreak of my childhood to be excluded. I went to a class with 18 kids. Like, that's it. That was my graduating class. That's how small my school was. And so when I was in school with 18 to 20 kids, give or take the year, and to be the only kid not invited, it rocked my world. It was the first time I realized, wow, like, there's people that don't actually like you, people that don't actually want you there. Like, if they could choose, they would. Like, and my daughter didn't have that. But for me, a real tool would have been to be able to turn around and ask that question. And so every time I'm in front of somebody and I'm asking them the question, is it even true? I always think of that childhood party that I wasn't invited to. And I created an entire narrative and then a personality to protect myself around that for the rest of my high school career because of a party I was invited to that I still don't know what was the reason.
What was the personality?
I pretended to be a aloof guy who was funny, who was the center of attention, who was always loud. I actually speak about this quite a lot, Jon. Like, I was not very liked. I was in the middle of everything, but I don't think people really enjoyed me when I was in high school because I wasn't authentically me. I was trying to be who I thought you wanted me to be. And then somebody else walked in the room and then I would try and be who they wanted me to be. And so I was a little bit of everything for everybody, but I was forever trying to be the clown. I was trying to be stupid. I wanted people to think I was cool or tough. An example of that was we ran out into the field one day at 15, 16 years old, and somebody found a pocket knife on the floor. And I picked up this pocket knife, and someone said, "Whoa, wow, that looks like it's really sharp." And I'm like, "No, it's not." And then I sliced my arm open, and it literally put like a inch gash into my arm. And then, I was trying to pretend like, oh, I'm cool. So I didn't care. And I just wrapped it and carried on with my day, not wanting people to know that inside I was terrified about what I had just done. But that really is an example of how, and I'm going to use terminology I don't care for very much, but how broken I was at the time because I really didn't trust me and I didn't allow other people to see me. And so I had this cycle of playing these characters that didn't change until sadly I was 26 years old.
26 isn't, I mean, you might say sadly, but I think there's a lot of people that would say 46 years old, 56 years old. I mean, 26 is pretty, for me, 26 is younger than when I started to drop some characters. That's what caused you at 26? Was it a heartbreak? Was it a job loss? Was it, you just got tired of it?
I didn't come from a lot of money. And so for me, I wanted people to respect me, to want to include me. And so in my mind, I said, if I was successful, then people would see me, value me, and appreciate me. They would realize I'm worthy. And so I set a goal that I would be a millionaire by 25. Well, I didn't make it at 25, but I did at 26. And when I sat down to celebrate me on my 26th birthday, I just bought a loft apartment. I had a sports car, I had all these things that I was now finally the man. And when I sat down, I realized, man, I'm still that little broken boy who didn't think he was good enough, who didn't think he was worthy. And that was really when I took out a pen and a paper. This was where my journey began. And I asked myself, like, am I worthy? And then I wrote out all the things I'd ever done that I thought was worth celebrating. Like, you own a business, you have 60 employees, you've made this money, you've done these things. And that was where I started saying, if I've done this, man, there has to be something good about me. I have to be, likable. I have to be whatever. And that was when I started my new relationship.
Wow. What are some other, would you say, unhelpful soundtracks you had about money?
Man, I had so many because, growing up, in a household where there wasn't a tremendous amount of abundance, I heard things like, people who have money have done bad things to get money. Like they'll step over you to get it. And, money doesn't grow on trees. And, we don't have money. We're not deserving. And so, I would see people have nice things. And I grew up in a town, Jon, where everyone was really wealthy. And then there was me. So my friends were getting houses and cars for their birthdays at 16, 18. And here, I was working from 8 years old all the way through high school, never having a weekend off, never having vacations, and just to keep up with the Joneses. And so I had a very different vantage point, but it was always validating. Hey, man, Rudy's not good enough.
Man, yeah, I would say money's one that I've worked on a lot and still have a lot of work left to do, definitely. And I think that's a common area where people struggle with that. How old are you now, Rudi?
47.
47. All right, I'm 49, so we're right there in the same spot. That's fun.
So I'm going to ask you then, because you opened the door there. What was your money story, and how did you create that shift? Because you and I both know that is like almost everybody's journey. They want to be able to make more money. They want to feel more validated through it. And how did you create that?
Well, part of it was letting go of kind of the must be nice attitude. Like if something, like there's a lot of people, when they see somebody succeed, they go, oh, that must be nice. And there's this element of, well, like, that's for them, not for me. Another soundtrack that I've worked on specifically is I can make more money than my parents. Like, and that's not shameful. And my parents never said to me, you can't. Like they never, like that I added a lot to that, and going, okay, well, like, when I did, it was like when I first did, it was embarrassing and I felt like I had done something wrong and kind of wrestling with that and going, okay. But same with I would say one that I've worked on a lot is, and it's very common, is mo money, mo problems. People go, if I get more money, I'll have more stress. I mean, there's a song about that. And so I had to look at it honestly and go, I've had no money and I've had some money, and no money is harder. Like when you have no money, the smallest problems are massive problems. When you have some money, you can fix those problems. So mo money, mo problems is not true. Like I can very easily go, when we had a transmission die in a car and we had no money, that was an emergency. When we had car issues and we had some money, we just paid somebody to take care of it, and it wasn't hard. Like, and so I can look at that when I go, it's not true. Where I would say I've worked on it probably the most is not setting arbitrary limits of what amount of success is okay, but really leaning into the craft of what I'm doing and serving as many people as I can, and allowing the money to be a response to that versus, well, I don't want to get too big, or I don't want to, this amount of money is selfish. This amount of money isn't selfish. All these things we put on money. But when I talk to people about soundtracks, that comes up a lot. And the other thing I would say is success in general. I fight really hard against the idea that to be successful means you're selfish, you don't have a good marriage, you're a workaholic, your kids don't know you, all the things that can happen. That 100% can happen, but it's not the only thing that can happen. Like my marriage is getting better and better every year. Like my 40s are so much more fun than my 30s. I think my 50s are going to be awesome. I'm crazy about my kids. Like I didn't sacrifice my, kids for my business. I took more vacation off when I owned my own business than when I did working for somebody else. So the idea of like, oh, you're an entrepreneur, no off days. You'll never, like, weekends. What are those? Like we have that idea too. And so I just think success in general, and you and I talked about this a little beforehand about like, be careful who, like, don't meet your heroes, kind of that idea, which can be true. But I love being the opposite of that. I love that. Like, I think I was like, oh, Rudi and I are going to have a great conversation because we, like, this stuff's coming from the heart. Like, it's not, I'm not here to perform, but I don't really believe it. And so like that you can be a genuine person. Like for me, that again, like I'm like anybody else. I have the same jealousies, the same, like ugly parts of my life, the same inadequacies, insecurities, all the stuff, a lot of that. But it's just, I try to work on it, and I also don't hide it. Like one of my soundtracks is the scars you share become lighthouses for people headed to the same rocks. And so I really like that idea that when I go like, man, this is challenging, other people go, oh, I thought once you hit the New York Times bestsellers list, you never had that challenge. Or, oh, I thought to be an influential person, you never had that challenge. Like, oh my gosh, like maybe other people don't have that, but like I have it. And because there's always somebody above you. So there's never a line of success where that solves the thing, and you and I have been around enough successful people to go, oh, they still got that hole. Like they still think like the bigger yacht is going to be the thing. And you're like, oh, that's too bad. Cause there's so much fun you can have like on the other side of things.
Gosh, Jon, everything you're saying is like music to my soul. So I just had a podcast episode came out today at the date of recording about the old masculine frequency that's dying and the birthing of the new. And I want to just touch on that for a second because everything you just said is in that episode. Eerily so. I even have a painting of a lighthouse opposite to remind me that my message isn't for everybody. It's for who needs the light, like who's coming into the harbor.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
Um, so here's what's beautiful about what Jon just said, and I want you to go back if you're listening to this. Let you just skip back 30 seconds a couple times so that you can rehear everything he just said. You know, he has achieved tremendous success, but he just used the terminology, and I'm a ninja for terminology. He said, I'm not here to perform. So it's not about impressing you. It's not about putting on a show. It's not about, he's here to create meaningful dialogue that carries the power of the potential to create a shift in you, only because he's had an experience that created a shift within him. And he's taken his experiences and turned them around and shifted them in you, but only if you're open and receptive to it. And that's where the lighthouse analogy came in. And in addition to that, we think that we need to hustle and we need to grind in order to be successful because that's what we were told. I mean, I was told, you got to work hard, you got to wake up earlier, you got to outsmart, outwork, stand on whoever to get to where you're going. And that paradigm has worked for many people for a very long time, but it no longer works. It is crumbling. And it is about finding balance. It is about finding peace, about finding joy. And then, yes, absolutely, success. And you can have success and an incredible marriage. You can have success and your kids can still love you. And you can continue to grow and to expand, but it doesn't have to be in the way that we've been led to believe or been conditioned to believe. I mean, I've gone to speak at events where people are standing on stage saying, you got to wake up and F and grind. And everyone's like, yeah. And then I walk out and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't believe that. Like I believe it can be in peace, joy, and harmony, and you can be even more successful. I want to add something only because I think this is for the benefit of the audience, because somebody I would imagine is going through this or has gone through this. Jon, I was married at least 6 years when my wife, Aniston, came to me one day and said, hey, we need to talk. And so, she tapped the couch and I was like, oh, what have I done? I'm going through the Rolodex in my mind of, did I do laundry? Did I put the toilet seat down? Like, what's going on? And she says to me, I've noticed a pattern with you that when you're around your family, you shrink your light. And I said to her, what do you mean? And she's like, you always apologize for success. And every time you've bought something or you have something nice and your parents or your brothers or friends comment on it, you diminish what it was. Oh, well, I got a really good deal on this. And so it was only instead of just saying like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, I got a new car or I like my house. And she said, you're actually preventing you from being more successful. But more than that, Rudi, you're preventing them from seeing what does success look like out in the world. And so you're not only diminishing you, you're diminishing their capacity to learn through you. And that was a real light bulb moment for me because I realized I had that dialogue in the back of my head saying, I don't want to overshadow anyone and make them feel bad about what I'm doing or what they're not able to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my two reactions. One, what a great thing for your wife. I mean, 6 years in, like that's a 30-year in like pro move to be able to say like, one, that's amazing. Like, please tell her that's amazing that at 6 years in, she had that ability. There was a space for her to say that. I think that's like, what a healthy situation for your marriage. The second thing is, yeah, I resonate with that a lot. I caught myself probably a couple years ago. I've had the same assistant for 10 years. She's amazing. And I wasn't using the word assistant because I thought that made me seem too highfalutin or too fancy or too like, who am I to have an assistant? And so I'd go, oh, this is Ashley. And she does stuff like versus just going, yeah, I have an executive assistant because I'm an executive. Like who am I? Who was I expecting to come and go, how dare you? How like you think you deserve an assistant? Like, oh, what is she like? Answer your emails. Like, and I caught myself doing that same thing. And I think you're right. And the challenge there too is like you end up kind of becoming dishonest about it. So then like if you don't point the way to other people, they end up hitting those rocks because you're not as bright as you could be. Like, because if you had to thread a lot to get there, you want to go, no, this is the path. This is the path. I'll never lie to somebody about how hard I write books, because that's really dishonest. If I tell somebody, yeah, it only takes me like 400 hours to write books, it usually takes me about 1,000. And if I tell them that, it encourages them, because then when they're on hour 400, they don't go, well, Jon just must get them done so quickly. And the reason I know it takes me 1,000 is I needed to know that, because I kept getting discouraged every time I'd write a new one. I hear this lie that would say the last one was easier to write. The last one came so much faster. The last one was simple. And so as far as the success, what's helped me, I had a friend ask this question. He said, have there been any relationships or friendships that have timed out? And I thought that was a really interesting phrase, timed out. And there have been. And not because of blowouts or not because of big dramatic things, just we stopped caring about the same things. And I realized I need friends that throw fuel, not water. I need friends who throw fuel, not water. Meaning, when I say a dream, they throw fuel on it. They don't throw water. I'm 49. I've had people already at my age go, well, why don't you just enjoy the success you've already had? Why don't you just, like, when are you thinking about retiring? I answer back, ask a bird why it flies. Because it's a bird. Because it's built for it. Because it's like, I don't feel like I'm chasing a number, or there's like, I want to get a Porsche someday. And I could never have said that years ago. Like, I would have but I want to get a Porsche someday. And a 911 specifically, hopefully a Targa. But a friend of mine was like, well, it won't fix your anxieties. And I said, oh, no, not at all. I'll be the same person in it that I'm outside of it. I'll still have the same anxieties. I'll just be going faster. Like, I'm not under the illusion that, like, if I get a certain thing, but I feel built to do this. I'm built to run. I'm built to go. And so that's the thing. Like, for me, that's fun. And you mentioned the performing versus serving. That changed my public speaking. So when I made the shift from I'm here to serve the audience versus to win them into thinking I'm neat, or to make them think Jon Acuff's cool, or make them think Jon Acuff's smart, but I'm here to serve them, where it switched, where I started to realize I get to be there an hour. The CEO is there all year. How do I make that CEO win? How do I make the event planner win? How do I make the person on the very back row, like, get something out of this? And, like, even more so, sometimes I'll tell myself before a big event that I'm nervous about, I'm the guy carrying the chicken. At a wedding, I'm not the bride. At a big event where they're announcing company news and they're worried about their bonuses, and, like, I'm carrying the chicken. I'm going to carry the best chicken you've ever seen. I'm going to deliver that to your table, but I'm not the bride. And that recenters me and gives me peace. Cause then I'm like, I'm going to go out and do cause I'm really good at it, and I'm going to do the best I can do. And I've already prepared this, but I don't have the tension of my identity is up for stakes. Like, that's where I see people get really stuck, is where everything they do, their identity is up for grabs. And, like, for me, one of my soundtracks is the rest of the day is gravy. The rest of the day is gravy. I already started full. Like, I already started with tremendous value. Like, the rest of the day is gravy. And that, even though I would say I'm a high stress person at times, helps me kind of temper that and enjoy the experience of this and have a lot of fun with guys like you on podcasts.
Gosh, I love all of what you just said. I want to take a slight pivot because there's something I want to ask you, but I'm going to add something to what you just said because it was just too good not to. For the longest time, I would walk into a room and my unconscious mind, would bring in thoughts and memories of when I felt unworthy and when I had to, as the kid, trying to play the character of who people wanted me to be. Having done all the work that I've done, more than 26 years in self development, now I'm standing there and I'm teaching, but I realized I was still performing. And I was still wanting to be the best speaker. I was wanting to be engaging. I was wanting to be liked. I was wanting to get a standing ovation. And the pivot for me was realizing I already am everything I aspire to be. And I don't need them to validate me. I don't need a standing ovation. I just need to teach in that moment and walk away and trust that if someone needed what I left in that room, that it was for them. And that shifted it because, like you said, you get nervous before a big event. I no longer get nervous. And people say, oh, but of course you get nervous all the time. And it changed for me. And I don't know if it'll come back, but the anxiety or the stress or the pressure is gone when I realize I don't need to perform. No matter what happens next is exactly the way it's meant to be. So whether it's right, it's wrong, it's good or it's bad, I am doing exactly what it needs to be in that moment. But I no longer feel that need to, you know, come out and give you everything that I've got and leave everything on the table and overcomplicate because I'm trying to, like you said in the very beginning, give you the keynote. And when you walk to the car, you're like, what do I do with all that? Like, very, very different. So you teach self-development. You are one of the greatest leadership coaches, mentors, and facilitators, because that's really your skill set from my vantage point. I know you did a research study, 3,500 people, and you asked them the question of, do you believe that you were living to your highest potential? And I would love for you to share a little bit about what was the insight that you took from that, because a moment ago we were just speaking about not overworking, not overperforming, and really essentially tapping into our highest and our greatest potential, but being able to do it in love and joy. And I think that that research study would be really eye opening for many people.
Yeah. So a soundtrack I'd give the entire audience is joy is the best alarm clock. Joy is the best alarm clock. Joy will wake you up and chase you out of bed. Like what you learn when you spend as much time as you and I have in this space is that no one changes just because. No one wakes up one day and goes, today I'm going to have grit. Today I'm going to have persistence. Today I'm going to, be disciplined. What always happens is there's a bigger joy, there's a bigger desire there, and it doesn't have to be massive at first. It can just be a sliver. There's a what if that is worth changing for. Like the only reason people ever leave their comfort zone is that there's something on the outside that's worth being uncomfortable for. Like you should never leave your comfort zone just because the title of it is comfort. Its first name is comfort. But what happens is you go, oh man, there's something I want out there. So for me, my version is I started a blog. This is probably 2008. And I didn't like my job and I had a bad commute and we had two young kids under the age of 4 and it was chaotic and we didn't have any money and it was stressful. And I started writing a blog and I realized I love this. Like, I feel like I could be made for this. And so that caused me to change my life. I didn't stop watching as much TV because I'm a disciplined person. I stopped watching TV because TV gave me nothing. Like my time became logs and I wanted to throw it in the hours of this fire that was the blog. Like I didn't stop. I started getting up earlier because I was disciplined. I started getting up earlier because as a dad of two kids under the age of 4, it was the only free time I had. So that's what I try to encourage people is when you find something like that, and you don't have to know how it's going to go for 20 years. You don't have to know your perfect why for the next 30 years. But when you find something like that, it creates its own momentum. Like the desire leads to the discipline. The discipline doesn't lead to the desire. That's backwards. So the study, we asked, more than 3,000 people, are you living up to your potential? And 96% of them said no. And that was really surprising. And 50% of them said 50% of their full potential is untapped. And so what I took from that is, one, everyone is capable of more than they think, and they kind of know it. And the second thing is, how can I encourage people to be brave and step into that? Because what I see, you did an episode about masculinity is different now. What I see, especially in men my age, late 40s, early 50s, is if they have 10 gear and you say to them, what gear are you at? They would say gear 8, and most of them are at gear 3. I think our culture has confused burnout when it's actually boredom. They're not burned out, meaning they've given their all, they've done everything, they've left it all on the table, they've opened every gift they've had. They're actually overstimulated and underchallenged. They've got every dopamine fix ever invented, and they still don't have a purpose. They still don't feel like they're going. So a lot of what I say to especially men is like, you're capable of more. There's so much there. What I say to young men, like young men who go like, I just want to be careful about work-life balance. I always go, whoa, you're 22. These are the build, go. No, I find myself saying the phrase do both a lot right now, where people come up and they go, Jon, should I write my book or work on my business? Should I do this or this? And I go, do both. I think you're capable of both. I see both in you. I think there's more. And so the study made me go, wow, nobody feels like they're living up to their full potential. Everybody has more to give. How do I, as a communicator, call that out in a kind, but clear, consistent, but brave way, like where I'm brave about it, but I don't, but I'm not one of those guys. It's like a shirtless Instagram influencer who's going to tell you to yell at yourself. You gotta hate yourself. I'm the opposite of that. I had an 18-year-old the other day say that to me. He goes, hey, there's really famous people that tell me on Instagram that I should yell at myself to kind of improve my life and I should beat myself up verbally. Why do you say, is it kind? And I said, well, one reason is the way you talk to yourself is how you talk to everybody eventually. So what you practice is what you end up spilling out to other people. The overflow of the heart overflows. So what happens is if you're somebody who uses shame as a motivator, or anger or self-anger as a motivator, you eventually are very angry to a spouse. You eventually spill that over to your kid. You eventually spill that over to, a coworker. And then the other thing, the big thing that's interesting to me is we avoid people who are mean to us, and that even means ourselves. You will find I would say how much you like yourself is directly related to how much busy work you do, because I think a lot of people fill their lives with busy work because if it was quiet and they don't like themselves, they would have to wrestle with that. And so I just think there's a lot of people preaching the opposite right now, where it's like, you got to yell at yourself. You got to and I think there's a lot of people in our space who are, running from trauma, like it's unprocessed trauma, but they're teaching it now as a technique. And you're like, that person doesn't seem like they've healed or is healthy or is, wow, that feels like they got a lot of stuff to deal with. That's not a technique we should teach people. That seems like you went through some stuff. That's hard. Like, I think that's really hard. What would it look like for you to not be so hard on yourself? Like, what's on the other side of that? It's such an interesting time in our space right now. So again, which is why I was like, oh, this will be Kelly, our mutual friend, was like, you got to talk to Rudi. And as soon as we talked before we started, I was like, oh, Rudi and I are going to be friends.
I just want to just take my hat off to you for a second. I'm thinking of that guy that had the courage to come up to you and say, I have people telling me to scream at myself, and you're saying I'm to be kind.
18-year-old boy. How great for an 18-year-old boy to ask that question.
But he wouldn't be able to if you didn't create the safe space. And that's why I said I wanted to take my hat off to you. I mean, I'm proud of him for being able to ask the tough question and to have the vulnerability, but he wouldn't have been able to do it if you didn't first create it. And that just starts off with who you are, with how you show up. I doubt anyone listening to this episode today has not heard of you before, hasn't followed you on some platform. But if you are listening to this episode and something in this episode has really piqued your interest, I'm going to challenge you to go and find one of his many books, 10 books that he has put out. All of them are absolutely phenomenal. Guaranteed that something in that book is going to change your life. You've dropped probably about 10 or 12 quotes that literally could go down for the eons of time that would support people just in this episode alone. Jon, I want to thank you for being who you are. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. I want to thank you for your vulnerability, for your honesty, for saying, man, it takes me, so many hours to write a book, 1,000 hours. And we're good friends with John Gordon, and he will say, oh my gosh, I wrote this book in 2 weeks. And I'm like, how do you just put out a book in 2 weeks?
I can't. Yeah. He must be able to type with his feet too. I'm just dealing. I got 2 hands. This is as fast as these hands will go. I don't know what to tell you, Rudi. I have lazy feet. Maybe that's my issue. Ultimately, Jon Acuff, lazy feet.
That is hilarious. Jon, I want to respect you and your time. And I want to ask, obviously, anywhere our audience can find you, what are you working on next? I did allude to it in the very beginning. I know that you have an event that's coming up later this year. Obviously, we're going to push people to go in and check out your podcast. I will drop the show link in there as well. But you also have a book that you're potentially in the process. I heard a rumor that you're working on. I would just love to know a little bit about where can people find you, and if there was one book that could serve our audience, knowing that everyone that's listening to this episode is a high achiever, wanting to create impact, find value and meaning in who they are, where they're going, but the race that they've been running no longer really means anything to them, and they're looking for a race that they can sink their purpose teeth into. What would be a good place for them to start?
Yeah, so I think soundtracks is the best place to start. It's super accessible. It's going to impact every part of your life because couples have soundtracks, friends have soundtracks, teenagers, kids have soundtracks, there's parenting soundtracks. So I'd say soundtracks. We are doing an event called Remarkable You. It's a 2-day event. And it's in Nashville where I live. It's just jonacuff.com/live if you're curious about that. And then I have a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal, where I talk to people about the goals they're working on. But conversations like this one went fast because we enjoy a lot of the same things. You don't have to, I'm not introducing you to vulnerability. We started vulnerable and kept that going. I mean, even just the way of like you thinking when I'm in a car and I have something I'm dealing with, how do I share it? So I think this is the first of many conversations like this you and I are going to have. And I can't wait to trade cell phones after this, because now we're actually friends. We get to go from internet people who kind of sort of know each other to actual friends. So I'm looking forward to that, Rudi.
I appreciate that very much, Jon. So much love to you and everything that you're doing out in the world. To our audience that listen to this incredibly powerful, beautiful conversation, I just want to challenge you to live up to the highest and the greatest potential that is within you. Because if we follow the data, that there's more than 50% of you know that you have more potential. But I want to challenge you to actually step into taking committed action, because a little bit of effort today compounded over time, you're going to turn around one day and send a letter to Jon or send a letter to me saying, you'll never believe what happened. And those are always my favorite letters to receive. We love you guys so much. Thank you for catching us. We'll see you in the next episode of The Empowered Life.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.